The Appalachian Trail starts in Georgia, and it runs for approximately 2,200 and something miles all the way to Mount Katahdin in Maine. But it begins 8 miles north of Apalachicola State Park. There's an approach trail that leaves the state park. You hike 8 miles, and then you pick up the Appalachian Trail on Springer Mountain, and it begins there, and it runs for 79 miles through the state of Georgia. And I have hiked every foot of it. I wanted to experience, I wanted to see it. I had read, like a lot of other people, A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. That's not what caused me to go out, but I grew up listening to John Denver, and so I always felt this spiritual connection to the mountains, both to the Rocky Mountains, but also the Blue Ridge Mountains, which you may remember from his song. He calls them Almost Heaven. And there's something about that, I think. I grew up going to the mountains when I was very young. My parents took me, as part of my growing up years, to the North Georgia mountains every fall. And so it's something that I have wanted to do every year. I live and work on the coast, but I really think that my soul and my spirit probably lives in the mountains. So for me, it was just a way to rejuvenate my spirit. Every fall and winter for about 3 years, I would hike part of the Appalachian Trail. From Savannah, we're 350 miles. I mean, you can be there in half a day with no problem, and you can hike, and any portion of it is literally accessible from some road. It's not a hard thing to find. It's not a hard thing to do. And depending on the time of year you do it, you'll have a lot of company or no company, but you'll always enjoy it. The idea for the Appalachian Trail came in the 1920s. As America is becoming more industrialized, the idea is that people now need to work to get back out into nature, which of course for most of our history, people were working in nature, whether it was on the farm or some other agricultural pursuit. So in the 1920s, you have this guy, Benton Mackay, who comes up with this idea of a footpath that stretches along the eastern seaboard. I think originally it may have, I'm not sure, it was going to go from someplace, maybe not in Georgia. I think it was going to run through the spine of the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Appalachian Trail mountains, all the way up into Maine. So this was started in the 1920s. It was completed in sometime in the 1930s. It varies from state to state. It originally had a different starting place in Georgia. It used to be at Mount Oglethorpe, and then they relocated it to Springer Mountain sometime later. But it's really quite an experience. A lot of people like to hike the trail all the way through. They're called through hikers. So in March in North Georgia, the place fills up with all sorts of people who are on this trek. For many of them, it's a spiritual journey. They've quit their jobs. They're going to hike this whole thing. Many of them make it about halfway through Georgia and they quit. It's pretty strenuous in many places. It's not something that's easy to do. I did it as a day hiker. I didn't have a backpack on. I hiked it in sections. There are many ways you can approach the trail, but it goes through some of the most beautiful country, I think, in the world. The Blue Ridge Mountains of North Georgia are just spectacular. I hiked it in the fall or in the winter when the leaves were either golden or down. So that way, when you reach a vista, when you reach a mountaintop, you can see for miles, and there's nobody out there. The snakes are hibernating. There are a few insects. That would be the only downside, I think, to hiking in summer. It's going to be warm. It is not for the faint of heart. Some of it can be quite strenuous, some of it's not. Do a little research before you go, but it's all worth hiking. You can see all sorts of wildlife. I have seen turkey, I've seen deer, I have heard things that I assumed were bears. I've seen bears in North Georgia, but never on the Appalachian Trail. If you do it in the fall, you may run into a deer hunter. So if you do it during hunting season, you want to wear blaze orange. That is the one thing I would say. You want to make sure that you can be seen by other people because hunters use all of that area in North Georgia. In the summer, you won't see that. But you're just going to see really a lot of things. Your cell phone probably won't work. You're going to untether yourself from modern society, and for most people that's a frightening experience. But it really is, they call it a footpath through the wilderness, and it really is a way to reconnect, I think, with that part of us. And the Appalachian Trail is a great place to do it. If you want to camp overnight, there are shelters along the trail, lean-tos that you can camp in. There are any number of places where you can just sort of make your own campsite off the trail, practicing the leave no trace hiking. You know, take out what you take in, leave nothing but footprints, take only memories. It is something that you can just get in the car and go do. For instance, you can drive up to Neal's Gap in North Georgia, which is on Highway 19 and 129, about halfway between Dahlonega and Blairsville. There's a neat little historic inn there that's now sort of a backpack mountain outfitters store. But it was built by the CCC boys in the 1930s as part of the New Deal, and it sits right on Neal's Gap, and you can park just south of there and hike up to the top of Blood Mountain, which is the highest point on the Appalachian Trail in Georgia. And it's a nice little day hike. It's about 6 miles up, 6 miles back. You know, you can do it in a day. It's not easy to do, but you can stop and rest and enjoy the views along the way, enjoy the scenery, enjoy nature. I mean, it really is a lot of fun. And you don't need a backpack. You can take a canteen or not, depending on what you want to take. But there are a lot of trails like that. There are a lot of places you can go in, park somewhere, hike as far as you want, come back out and do it in a day. Good family fun.